What is up, headhunters, executive recruiters, and all you beautiful people out there in the land of misfit toys, otherwise
Like
known as
Charlie
the
in the
recruiting
box. I'm like
world?
Charlie in the box.
This is David Stephen Patterson. You know me as your boy DSP, and to my, I guess, to your left, right, my left, I don't know, Neil Lebovitz of the of boss fame, I
You know me
suppose.
as
Back
NSL.
back office staffing solutions. Also, the owner of the Ursa Facebook group. But yeah, I'm bad on because today I'm actually pretty excited. I'm a bit tongue tied actually today because we have somebody of actual merit on the show, and this is Tom Stern. Tom Stern is a multiple year $1 million biller solo producer out of his home. He is also an author. He has just released a book called Fear Less and Sell More, and with a foreword by Jay Leno. So, he actually has friends in high places. He is a former actor. He's a former comedian. He's an Academy Award winning writer producer. Yes, that is real. I did
And
not
he's
just make
from
that up.
I think it was his granddad was the chairman of Sears. I mean, this guy, the stories
Right.
are almost unbelievable.
He has seen. Oh, and he had a nationally syndicated comic strip at one point. So yeah, the guy's kind of done it all. I guess you can say he's a bit of a Renaissance man. So anyway,
So
he's going to
why?
be on the show here in about
So
10
here's the
minutes.
big question, though, and I guess we wait for him to get on. We'll wait for him to get on. So we're gonna go through that background. How does one go from that into recruiting? So yeah, I've got this and learned from my dad who built Sears from a garage and this and that. I want to place talent. So
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. There, think about recruiting. One thing I've always said is that it always seems like recruiting is like the land of misfit toys. We didn't belong anywhere else. We just never really had direction, and then we just got into the recruiting world. I mean, nowadays people go to school for recruiting and actually want to be recruiters. But back when I started, you
where?
typically had to fall
University
ass
of
backwards in
the U of
business.
R. Where is there a school for recruiting? Who goes to
Well,
school for?
U of R, but people in college they come out and a lot of them want to be recruiters, right? It's a actual career track as opposed to it seems like a couple decades ago. It was I'm tired of accounting. Okay, let me go
But
recruit
that's more like
accountants.
corporate recruiting, don't you think? Like
Yeah, I'd say, but
HR and talent management as opposed to peddling flesh like we do.
or being a cyber pimp, as I like to call it. I think it's pretty cool, cyber pimp. But yeah, but at the same time, it does seem like it's more of an actual courage, like even agency, especially as these the big firms, big name brands get bigger and bigger and bigger, as well as more market share. There's it's an actual industry unto itself, as opposed to it's still a cottage industry in a lot of ways, but you look at again 20 years ago. 30 years ago, a lot more cottage, and it didn't seem like it was really in anybody's like no one really knew what a recruiter did or what they or what or the kind of money they made until unless you happen to know someone in the business. But now it's such a ubiquitous sort
When
of
I left
it's a big
Ernst
word,
and Young,
ubiquitous.
I was an auditor, got my CPA for Ernst and Young, one of the top accounting firms in the world, right? And I gave notice to be a recruiter, and the partner for recruiting. He looked at me. He refused to accept my resignation, and he said, "Let me just ask you a question." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why on earth would you prepare and study and do everything you did for this, and go to such a shitty job?" That was his exact words to me. And in 1988, that conversation happened. I'll never forget it. Shit, and this is a partner, right? Such a
and
shitty
and and
job.
and in 2021, you ended up on a show with me. What happened, sir? Where
If you
did it
only
all
knew,
go
the
wrong?
internet didn't even exist then. So yeah, yeah, I couldn't have predicted this, David.
Show me on the doll where he touched you, Neil. Where did it all go wrong? Oh man.
It does. It phases me. It hits me. Happy July 4th to you, my brother. I love the
Happy
background.
July 4th. I'm so excited. Any plans this weekend?
I got nothing. I've been working like a dog. I'm going to get out a little bit. No, I've got nothing. My plans have changed drastically. So stuff happens.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got the news on that. I got the news on that. I get the skinny. We won't say anything on the show, but Neil thinks I'm his friend, so he confides in me.
I do.
Uh,
Hey,
and I
so
make sure to
happy
take
July
plenty of
4th. It's
notes.
good. Unlike Memorial Day, where we had to instruct people, it's not happy Memorial Day. But I'm amazed
Mhm.
at how fast it goes. And the recruiters too. Like I remember you look at your billings, and it's like monthly, and then if you work for a firm, quarterly. You're always looking at everything, and it's been a month since Memorial Day. How crazy is that? And a month from now, it's going to be the dog days of August, and then a month from then, everyone's back in school. Time's crazy.
The older we get, man, the faster it goes. I tell you what, man. But I got to say this, and back to the point about recruiting being the land of misfit toys. I will say this, before we bring Tom on. And Tom, by the way, is coming on in just a few minutes here, so we want to make sure we get plenty of time with him. Because I really want to ask him. He's got some great stories that he told us last week when we met him and we spoke about some pre-show stuff. But I will say this, as far as recruiting being like the land of misfit toys, sometimes I do kind of miss that mentality because again, recruiting in a lot of ways is becoming a lot more well known. It's more of a real career track as opposed to what it used to be. And I remember I used to have to explain what we did to people back 20 years ago when I got into search. I'd explain it because it was such a foreign concept for a lot of people. Now everybody seems to know what it is, but I do find it pretty funny.
You know what you
Um,
need to do? I'm sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead.
But I will say one of the bad things about being a recruiter is at Thanksgiving dinner you got family in there and your cousin says, "Hey, I heard you're a recruiter. Can you find my uncle a job?
Right,
What does
right.
he
Love
do?
that. But
Oh,
my dad,
he
yeah.
works at the Kinkos and the." I'm like, no, it's not. It's not what we do.
You know what?
It's why.
No matter what you do, and this is why people watch a show like this and they watch other podcasts, is you need to constantly reinvent yourself. No matter what, like it's a basis for earning a living. The creativity of which you approach any business. And again, like I've morphed into this back office staffing solutions that is we service recruiters, but I'm not a recruiter anymore. Like,
That's what I've heard.
and that happened from just being creative and listening to other people and learning and constantly evolving.
Mhm.
And this is
Oh,
a
no, no.
natural evolution from when I was a recruiter. If you look at it, it was the Cro-Magnon period for me, and then it just evolved with that little man walking and upright and walk. Is that good? And becoming, erect. When I say erect, I mean standing straight, a human in that evolution chart. And so you need to be building your business. You need to be using new tools. You need to be stretching yourself. You need to be learning from people like Tom Stern.
Speaking of you servicing recruiters, Neil, let me ask you about that. Uh, Anyway, no, but you're right. Almost same thing here, right? I never would expected me to get into the digital marketing side of things. It really was not something that was on my radar. I was a recruiter, just a dumb jock, a dumb phone jock recruiter who kind of lucked into the business. And then, yeah, so it's interesting how things progress. I will say, though, Jeremy Nichols just made a comment here, and he asked about being on the show. We need to get him on. So Jeremy Nichols is another good example of. And by the way, Jeremy Nichols, he's a fellow Tampa Hood rat, so he's here local to me. But Jeremy, again, land of misfit toys, right? Jeremy, he's about my age, and he's a DJ, still a DJ, right? He's doing all that. He's a DJ, and he also owns his firm, and he also has a career coaching program to really easy to get into career coaching and starting to put out material along those lines. But it's kind of funny, like I said, land of misfit toys, right? I've known so many just oddballs that are in the business, and I've always been very proud of that. Very, very proud of that.
Yep, I'm
That's
with
just
you. So let's
yeah.
bring out our guest, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, let's do it. All right.
The one, the
Boom, here we
only.
go. And Jeremy, yes, we will have you on the show. So reach out to me. We'll get you on. All right, Tom Stern. Here we go.
Pull him in from the green room. Put
Oh,
those muffins
there
in.
we go. We got him.
There he
There
is.
he is.
Tom, how was
Hi
it?
guys.
Did you eat all the donuts and treats we left in there for you? In the
I
birthday
did.
party?
I'm going into a diabetic coma as we speak. Actually,
Nice.
So,
very nice to be
Tom,
here.
so for those of you who don't know, Tom Stern is a former comedian. He is, although almost as funny as I am, which is amazing. But he's an Academy Award winner, writer producer. So we can talk about that. Also, multi-million-dollar producer. He is an author. We'll talk about his book "Fear Less and Sell More," with a foreword by Jay Leno, and he's done in the comic strip. He had a nationally syndicated comic strip, and so Tom, I have to ask you this question. This is really serious. Now I want to bring the tempo down because I want to
Okay.
get
We make
to
our
the
guests
pearl
cry. This is like we're like
of
Oprah.
why a man with your accolades and accomplishments would ever be on a show where Neil Lebovitz gets his clients by servicing recruiters. Explain yourself, sir.
Thrilled to be here.
I'm just kidding. Actually,
I
we're thrilled
know,
to have you here too.
but
We're a
I
little bit
did.
irreverent, as you can tell.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to be a part of this, and you guys are funny and bright and informative, and you're obviously talking about a domain that I've spent over 30 years in, and I did love your question, although you haven't posited it yet, Neil, which is how did I end up in
Yeah.
recruiting, which is probably a good question to ask of almost everybody. And misfit toys, a phrase I'm not acquainted with, but and has been used, I think, 13 times so far in the show. So it's obviously very meaningful to you
The counter.
guys.
Click, click, click.
I have some bizarre associations to misfit toys, but I don't know if I want to mention them. But anyway, so you asked, before when I was listening, how did I end up as a recruiter?
Well, as a pet, like you're almost royalty. I mean, right?
Oh,
Like,
stop.
no,
Okay, so we
but
gotta
give them a
get
little
rid of
backstory
that.
because you
No,
won't
no,
give
no,
them
no.
backstory
I'm
about
the black sheep.
Sears, about your dad. Like this,
No,
you come from.
wait.
No, it's
Neil.
important because
Okay,
you learn from these
I'm
things.
from business royalty. I'm a
Okay,
complete. I was. If they could have gotten rid of me without any publicity, they would have. I was the black sheep, the loser, the failure. To answer your question, how I ended up as a recruiter, I'd say drugs had something to do with it.
they
Like
always do.
20
Branded
years of
Mystery
drug
Toys, I'm
Always
use.
telling you.
does.
I think was given a tiny trust fund, which was fortunate for me because if I'd been given more, I, probably would have died.
Was
But
it
I
from the
lived
Sears? Was it a Sears trust fund or from your dad's side?
handed down, yes. And
So
he
a
was my
tiny trust
great.
fund for you is like a lottery ticket for us. I bet
No,
you.
well, I don't know.
How much are we
It
talking,
was
Tom?
enough
No, I'm
for me
kidding.
to. No, it was enough for me to live in a crappy apartment for about 13 years.
In
But
where? In New
in
York?
New York,
Yeah,
primarily, I
okay.
moved to
A
Los
crappy
Angeles.
apartment in New York is a luxury
No,
high
no, no,
rise.
no. This is 1970s.
Okay.
Rent was 700 a month or
David
600.
Dinkins
The
era.
nights in New York. Was the movie The Warriors? It was The Warriors, New
Well, I
York.
was on
Right?
101st. I was on 101st in West End. So,
Oh
Brown
my
Water
God.
came out. I was awakened every day by incredibly noisy garage, garbage trucks. But anyway, no, in my case, there are two things. One, I do believe I screwed up every possible connection I ever could have had. I was a comedian. I did creative things that I loved, but didn't make any real money. And I hit 33 years old, and I got out of the business, and I got sober 32 plus years ago. And I was drying out. I was a mess. I couldn't drive. And somebody told me about recruiting, which, as you mentioned earlier, I didn't even know what it was. And I had been an agent, which is similar. I was peddling talent, different domain, entertainment. So I thought, okay. And I just interviewed, and they would take a warm body, and ended up in a boiler room with 20 guys and a headset and a directory, knowing nothing about corporate business. And they said, sell. That was their training.
Yeah, that's
Sell.
good. Yep.
Here's a resume. And so I began my career. I'll never forget my first candidate, Bob Putoff. I don't remember how it's
Bob
spelled.
put off? Put like Bob put off?
Putoff. Putuff, I think.
Oh my
Putoff.
God.
And he made printed circuit boards at Printronix in Orange County. He was out of work. I don't know what he was making, and I don't want to say it on the air in case Bob's listening or finds out and I get sued. But he was not making a fortune. And I got on the phone and sweating through my shirt, I talked about statistical process control, failure rates, the incredible job that Bob does. I never met Bob. I didn't know what total quality management was. I didn't even understand how to use a computer. I just sold. And that's how I started my career, with my back against the wall, sweating. And I found that ultimately it was storytelling and it was performance art. And once I kind of got my feel around that, I realized it had a creative component to it. And then I started to get my sea legs. And then I was, fortunately for me, a top performer within 3 months. And then within 4 years, I started my own firm.
Imagine if you decided to put that drive into selling wrenches and pliers and tires. You would have lit Sears up. You would have been the top. You would have gone
Stop
from
with the
black.
Sears thing. First of
Stop,
all,
stop the salesman of September.
my great grandfather took over the company at the turn of the 20th century. He died in 1930. And quite frankly, the greatest thing about Julius Rosenwald was that he took all that money and he gave it all away. He
That's
built
amazing.
black.
I love that. I love that.
He built black. He was the first guy to do that in his lifetime. He built black education in the United States, 5,400 schools with Booker T. Washington. He was an amazing visionary. He created the assembly line before Henry Ford. He had the first 401k. He cared about his employees. He was an amazing guy. I don't even shop at Sears. I've never shopped at Sears. I don't care about Sears. But he was a cool dude. And my father made his own mark as well. And
what'd your dad do again? Because your dad was super successful. I've heard,
yes, he was one of the 4 or 5 founders of cable television. And in the 1960s,
yeah, that's all. That's all. My dad, my dad was a social worker. So yeah, my dad was he founded cable TV. You know that internet thing? I was not. It's just little dot codes, ones and zeros.
No, he was for a brief period. He was ruler of the universe, but it was like a year. But anyway, and he was the national chairman of the association and a lot of other big jobs. But
so
the truth
isn't his name Jacob Spectrum Cox Cablevision? That's his.
Well, he was television communications, and he sold it to Steve Ross, who was running Warner Brother Kinney. That became Warner Communications. My father was the president of the communications piece. He retired before it became Time Warner. Otherwise, he would have made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I would not be speaking to you because I'd either be an arrogant jerk or I'd be dead from drug use. So, you know, it's an interesting turn of events. But I was pretty much broke when I walked into a boiler room and started selling things I had no knowledge of or understanding. But I did understand people. And I think as recruiters, since that's your audience, my success has all been about reading people and encapsulating people. Both when I promote them, I will tell somebody why they're great, what my assumptions are based on. And when I talk to candidates, I do what I call my Jamaican psychic hotline without the accent. And I basically talk about who I think they are. And here's my snapshot. Here's my intuition on you. And I'm generally pretty good, actually better than that, quite honestly, years of practice. And people feel seen. And when they feel that you understand them, even on the phone, and you understand their dreams, their personality, their limitations, their strengths, they trust you. And then if you build on that trust with, good hard work and straightforward communication, you can build a career. And that's what happened to me.
Now that's the basis of cold reading, right? So cold reading, for those who don't know, used by say like magicians and psychics to say, and oftentimes it's a bit of a scam, right? They say things that generally most people would feel, but people like to be seen. So it's that same sort of thing. They tend to believe those things.
Well, I sense that you're feeling some stress, and some people are living up to their expectations.
Yeah, and also, there's also the other aspect of like what you talked about is learn how to read people and giving it back to them, because people again like to be seen and they like to feel affirmed. So let's chat about that, because I'm curious, when you're talking with a candidate, what are you looking for when you're trying to cold read them, as if it were, right?
Well, vocal tone is where I start. Vocal tone and breathing patterns. Has to do, the breathing pattern is their nervous system. The vocal tone is their level and capacity for expression. How many octaves do they have of expression? Where is their tone? Is the tone warm, cold? Are they adagio, slow? Are they staccato, which is biting and quick? I think of them musically because I was trained as a jazz improvisational.
Of course you were.
Singer.
Of course you were. You're ridiculous. Your life is ridiculous. You're almost fake.
I think Neil is jealous of your child.
No, here's the bottom line.
I was
guys.
trained as like Juilliard, right? You're going to tell us you went to Juilliard.
No, I didn't go to Juilliard. I'm a dilettante, masquerading as a Renaissance man.
Listen,
okay?
I don't even know
so can we put this to rest?
That's my point.
Hey, I
Don't talk
enjoy
to
a
me in
lot of
anything.
different things.
I just
But
love
what happened for me was that all these little things that I developed some expertise at, cobbled together, really helped me as a recruiter. So I'm not, I'm a decent scat singer, but in recruiting, the auditory mechanisms and the tonality differentiations that I was able to achieve listening to people. The other thing that I'll tell you a quick story.
Hold. I want you don't forget that. I just want to talk about that one point because it goes into what I hear a lot of really successful $1 million recruiters talk about, and that's that intuition, and that's the read. So people can say a staccato or this and that, but it's that read on the people and knowing when to walk, when you're not going to waste your time. It not chasing after fool's gold, as I always say. Like it just so using your gut to do this, saying I'm not going to put my energy into this person as much as it looks like 9 of the other recruiters that they met where they're going to jump all over them and waste their time or whatever, right? So I think it's so important that you use your gut and and with more experience you get more of a gut. You learn of what's going to happen. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, I think it's so important. So anyway, back to
Well,
your story.
I think you mentally massage them. And in massaging, you find out where they're tight, where you can push, where it's rigid and calcified. And in doing that, you build this relationship and you find out where you can push them. The other thing, I'll tell a quick story, is finding those nuggets of gold. Now, I place very senior people, and not always, I didn't start there. And so I have long sales cycles and I get to know them, and they tend to be willing to reveal themselves. But at any level, look for a psychological nugget of gold. So I'll tell you a quick story. I represented somebody, McKinsey, Wharton, Harvard, MIT, everything. I found out he was a super genius who was going to have a PhD by the age of 16, but his parents ran out of money. He was an immigrant family. And so he entered a normal high school and was bullied by the jocks who he then helped do their homework as a way of avoiding intimidation and bad behavior on their part. So I got to know this about him and how he had worked his way up and had this extraordinary resume. It came down to 2 firms, the one I represented, which was then Anderson Consulting, now Accenture, and another mid-sized firm. And he said, Accenture, it's a monolith, it's a million floors, incredible resources, I could learn forever. He said, but the smaller firm is great. And I kind of sometimes take pleasure in being the smartest guy in the room. And I said, yeah, but you don't want to do their homework. Boom.
Yeah. Well,
bang.
that's awesome.
I brought back the trauma. I interwove it into the overall sense he had of that firm. I had a different meaning because people weren't bullying him, but it meant you may have to carry people. Being the smartest guy in the room, you're not going to learn as much and you're not going to have the resources to catapult yourself. He took Accenture, became a partner, was there 15 years, and it's all because of me.
That's right. Well, if you strip it down to things that people can use, my approach when I ran a desk and I was, really successful, I didn't chase the people that every recruiter was like going after. I would spend the time like you did to suss out and to really get to know these people. Because you're going to end up getting this amazing relationship with them. But I would find that one, and after I spend that time, they are loyal to me. They are going to be future clients. They're going to give me future referrals, and I'm going to place them. When I get that one, I spend that time for that one. Not just get an MPA, but when I totally use the MPA, MPC approach, but it would be utilizing your psychology, your methodology, so that I made a placement every time and future business. It was just so... It's just how I wanted to do it because it was mind numbing to me, that relentless chase and the relentless turnover of like people. So I think it all lends itself to that.
Well, recruiting
now, I will say this. Now, to piggyback off that, so one of the things that I've always tried to do, and sometimes it's you get busy, you've got a lot of requirements, job orders you're working on, but generally speaking, when I found, especially when I got into this side of the business. When I started selling to recruiters, doing things like asking why. I mean, so for example, because you're looking for motivation, like what you did there, right? So when you took the job, why did you do that, and why is that, and continue to ask those why questions, and get further and further down, and let them talk. Because the other thing about recruiters is we love the sound of our own voice, do we not? And so we'll ask the question and then we answer for them. So why did you do that? Was it because of this or because of that? Or did you do this other thing? Let me know. And then so you have to say it and let them just go. And sometimes, yeah, you do get that gold occasionally, you know. But I think recruiters as a whole, we just like to hear ourselves talk too much. I know I do. I love the
Well,
sound
can
of
I
my voice.
respond to that? Because that's a
Yeah.
great point, and you characterized it so perfectly. That dovetails, and forgive my shameless plugging, my book, because when a recruiter doesn't listen, plays both sides of the conversation, that kind of compulsive talking and that blocking of intimacy is all anxiety. It all comes from I need to be in control. I love the sound of my own voice, partially because I'm so afraid to give up control and be there for you. I'm going to disappear. So there's anxiety about being invisible. There's anxiety about losing control. And there may be other even trauma associated with it, which there was in my case. So over talking is endemic and unfortunately pandemic with recruiters. But the fact of the matter is that it's an expression of fear and anxiety. And, my book talks about how you can express yourself, how you can use your imagination, and how you can receive other people's sales expression, personas, and multi-layered experience. And that's where the game becomes sustainable and fascinating and an adventure. And that's how I've done it for over 30 years. Because the sound of my voice is good, but it ain't that good.
Well, when it comes to that anxiety, let's talk about that because that's actually something that is near and dear to my heart. Excuse me, is social anxiety. So, for me, I had a speech impediment growing up.
Wow.
I'm verbally apraxic. I still have it, but it was very severe when I was younger, and I couldn't talk. And so they thought I was a stutter because they didn't know what apraxia really was back then. And so it took me a long time to beat it. But the converse of that, so I'm a big fan of the obstacle is the way. Whatever's your obstacle, that is the way. So that was my obstacle. So that became my way. I decided to get into this sort of profession and where I'm selling and talking all the time, and I have a severe speech impediment. Why would you do that? Well, I did that because I wanted to conquer that. But on the flip side, what it did do is then I had just like what you said, that anxiety that now I can talk and I can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, which is amazing to be able to communicate freely. But now I want to feel like I'm in that control all the time because I don't want to lose it. And I think you hit on that pretty well. And I guess my question on that is back to just being anxious, because I think a lot of recruiters, especially newer ones, whether it's cold calling, whether it's believing themselves, whether it's selling instead of word taking, whatever it is, they got to put themselves out there. But I'm curious, how did you figure out or get past your anxiety? Because that's a killer for a lot of people.
Sure. Well, some of it's time and experience. There's no substitute for doing something a lot, making mistakes, and seeing what works. There is no magic formula. In my case, there were a couple of things.
Well, the magic formula is doing a lot and see what doesn't work. That's the magic formula.
That's a lot of it. But I do think there's shortcuts. In my case, when I realized it was a game and that it was a performance art, that the curtain went up, the phone rang, and the second they picked it up, that's when the performance began. And to see it as a dance, not a solo performance, and to realize that the burden wasn't completely on me, and that all these people that I was talking to, yeah, I needed to make my nut and my numbers. They needed to have a great career. They had hopes and dreams, and that I could represent that to them. I had something potentially they wanted. And what I learned was over time, the better I got and the more placements I made, I actually had power and influence. People talk to me because they think maybe someday he'll have that dream job for me. And we hold that in a magic bag. So you don't have to work as hard. But people are afraid of failing. They're afraid. Let's be honest. A lot of recruiters, you had a speech impediment. Congratulations, overcoming it. I had dyslexia, ADHD, and I was a bedwetter. By the way, being a bedwetter, not fun. I mean, got to tell you, when I went to camp and was the only kid with a rubber sheet, it didn't make me friends on day one, okay? But although a quick story, I doubled down, and when they made fun of me, I said, hey, when I'm angry, I sleepwalk, and I'll wet your bed. And that got them to back off. So, but we lived through, a lot of us, misfit toys. A lot of us live through tremendous things that require grit and fight. But the key is to know when to stop fighting and to realize, hey, this is an easy moment. This isn't that constant challenge. Because what can happen is you become like Sisyphus, the Greek myth, that you're always pushing the boulder. You're always involved in the struggle. And recruiting and sales can be a joy if you see it as an expressive art form where you use your voice, your imagination, your capacity to listen and understand and real-time improvise. And you guys, obviously, with your verbal skills and all the rest, have all the capabilities. But, it's really sensing. And now in the world of Zoom, where there's going to be less in person, that almost kind of, telekinetic component is going to be more and more useful as we are not present with people and we have to sense them through voice and expression. So to me, it's a game, it's a journey. And then I have something called the inner corporation, which is a structure to manage your personality and break it down into parts. And so that when a voice comes up, you go, oh, that's my inner critic. Oh, that's my risk assessment person. They're trying to save me from disaster. Oh, this is my time for my chief marketing officer. And you have all these different buttons that you can push and levers. And when you break down your personality into parts, what you find out is what are the strong parts that you rely on and maybe too much? And what are the weak areas where you can bolster them? And I'm trying to sum up an entire book in 2 minutes and talking too much. But there are in the book references to internal structures and then external approaches.
Now, I will say this: when it comes to anxiety, to follow up with that, and you're right. I think there's a certain time you have to fight and push, and I'm a bit of a stoic in the sense I'm a fan of stoicism, in the sense of I'm a big believer that the iron sharpens iron, right? And I'm a big fan of that. But at the same time, I do see what you're saying as far as kind of backing off and letting things flow. But I will say, just to interject just one thing here, and from there I want to get into your book. But for those of you who are listening who have that anxiety, right? And one thing here's what I did to get over this too. The old saying is when you're young, you're worried about what others think about you. When you're middle-aged, you stop caring what others think about you. When you're old and wise, you realize no one's thinking about you in the first place, and that's freedom. And one thing that I did to get over my anxiety, things like cold calling or talking to a VP or whatever it is, right, was to do little things like that was out of my comfort zone. So some of the advice I typically give is go to a mall and go and compliment 5 people, right? Just do that. And
I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat?
So
go to a mall,
compliment 5 people or 10 or just whatever. Give the numbers, have a goal, and compliment them. See the smiles that you get from some stranger. Say, hey, I really like your shoes there. Yeah, good stuff. And then go away, right? From there, you can progress. Maybe go to the mall and give 10 people a high five. Maybe not nowadays because of the COVID thing, but go and just randomly go, hey, high five, bam. If they don't give it to you, well, that's their problem. But you give them a story that they tell their friends, yeah, this guy showed up and just gave me a high five. It was weird, but it's kind of cool. You see the smile and you realize you have that freedom, that social freedom, and you're not constrained by this little box. And if you do that consistently and then take that to your practice and realize you can call that VP, you can call it doesn't matter. You can try new things. It's not, you're not going to die. And so I think doing those little sort of like games with yourself in social situations breaks down those barriers. I know it helped me a lot over my anxiety, but we're specifically stuff like that.
Hey, I think those are terrific suggestions. But again, you turned it into a game. You turned it into a performance. You gave yourself an objective. You were an actor in the game, and you played the part of gregarious, outgoing, positive person. And that's a great core position in sales. But there's so many other moods and tones. Do you know? I'm sure you do. But this is something that's helped me. What's your voice of authority? What's your voice of compassion? How do you behave when you're healing someone's pain? How do you behave when you're leading them? How do you play philosopher or prosecutor? When I was new and would do, when I was new and would do anything to make a placement, I was so desperate. I mean, within reason. I remember I was desperate to make this placement, and I got the perfect candidate. after days of falling flat, and he told me, I'm happy on my job. Well, that was like the worst news I could have heard. And I actually said to him, but what is happiness? Are you really happy or are you complacent? Are you comfortable or are you truly fulfilled? And I went into this philosophical decision tree, a bifurcation of it. And I got him and I said, maybe you just know the parking guard when you come in, or the person in the office next to you, and it just feels good and you make a decent amount of money and you never have to worry. Is that enough? Are you settling? Maybe you are. You've been there 10 years.
So right, you're getting to that emotional root anyway, where everything lies, and that's ultimately what. And I hate candidate control and when people use those terms, but it's ultimately like all these things you're talking about. It's such an interesting spin on the things that strip down to the normal subliminal ways of leading people, of selling, of persuasion. Right?
Yes.
That's really what it is. It's just a real life stories and real life ways that because what you're doing is this is how you persuade people. Period.
You prosecute their defenses. You don't get you have to know when to compliment them and just be low key and nice, but there are the critical points where you challenge their decision making, because you are a change agent. You're part of a decision process. And when you can become a trusted advisor, when you can speak truth to them, you can find that crack, because everybody's got it.
But you just said a trusted advisor, and David talks about that, and I talk about it, and every trainer or guru talks about it. But what is a trusted advisor? And it is doing these things that you talk about and things that are in your book. That's what makes you a trusted advisor. You could say, well, I'm a trusted advisor. We work with our partners to become trusted advisors. It's nonsense. Unless your actions and your strategy and your approach is one of a trusted advisor.
Yeah, and you can also use humor with people. I'm sure you guys do, because you're really funny.
Oh, yeah.
You have to get a sense of the kind of people who want to laugh. I mean, in business, there are people who they see laughter as weakness, or they see it as a letting down your guard. But you can tease people when you really know them well, or you can make a joke. Even there's a billionaire that is a client of mine, and he said I sent him a copy of the book, and he wrote me and he said, I'm certain your book will be a bestseller. And I wrote back, well, it definitely will be if you'll buy 100,000 copies.
Right.
And I put a smiley face, and he laughed, because he has the money to do it, by the way. I mean, if he wanted to take $300,000 and put me on the map just because he felt like being generous, he could. But
it's a $3 book?
No, I'm sorry. It's $18. So my math was improper.
Math's
1.8 million.
Now for a tactical view of this. So I do want to bring this up. I know we have to get the news, but so one thing I've learned, I actually learned this a few years back, is the use of tonality in your voice. So I think normally for recruiters, we don't realize that there, especially on the phone, there's no body language, and we do a lot of our communicating through body language, and so we have to use our tonality to make up for the lack of body language. And one of the things that I felt really helped me in my calls was, and I actually learned this from Jordan Belfort in his program a few years back, and that's where I really kind of first heard of this, which using tonality to lead the person to where you want them to go, where they should be going. So, for example, when you're in negotiation, using the reasonable man tonality, right? Now, is that fair? Fair enough. Like as opposed to this sort of like what am I thinking of? But just this dead,
abrasive, antagonistic,
or being deadpan, right? Because as a recruiter, you're on the phone all day. You don't think about your tonality, as opposed to, hey, if we're negotiations, I need to make sure my tonality is like this. When I'm really sure and I want to really instill certainty, there's a different kind of tonality when you really are making an emphasis, really making a point, as opposed to when you want someone to listen. Sometimes you bring it down and they listen because you're lower, and they lean in, and using those sorts of techniques to lead them to where you want to go, instill feelings of certainty or instill feelings of fairness, or whatever that is. So I'm curious, is that something that you talk about? 'Cause I know you talk a lot about reading the person and working with them.
No, vocal tonality. I just said, what is your voice of authority? What is your voice of compassion? I'll tell you a quick story that really talks about the power of developing tonality. when I was an actor, I was pretty self-conscious, and I got this big part in a play. It doesn't matter what, and I had to play this 65-year-old general, and I can do the voice to this day in Morocco in 1855 and whatever. And I said, when I do this voice, I told the director, I feel relaxed. And I had this psychological theory. I think I'm hiding behind the voice. So if they don't like me, the audience, it's okay. They're not rejecting me. They're rejecting the voice. Do you think that's what's going on? He said, no, that's complete BS. The reason you're not having anxiety is you're focusing on your voice. You're not thinking about the audience. You're not looking at them. You're not calibrating their response to you. You're trying to maintain this accent, and that's putting your mind on it. So one of the great things is to be mindful of your voice and experiment with it, and it takes away from the anxiety. How am I doing? Are they going to take the job? Am I having the effect I want? Because you stay alive in the moment and you can adapt and shift and not get stuck in the anxiety. Anxiety is a constrictor. Just as fear reduces the blood vessel width and creates cold, anxiety does it to your mind. It renders it crippled. And so having these things that don't have to do with yourself. I love this phrase, and I'll finish with this about self-centered fear. It's all about low self-esteem. One friend of mine described it as being a piece of crap that the world revolves around. And, that's the danger of low self-esteem and self-obsession. So you have to put your mind on other things. Sales and recruiting are a fascinating process. Human beings are infinitely interesting. And if you work with imagination, voice, words, and expression, it's a canvas that you can paint for the rest of your life and never be bored. And that's how I look at it.
Well, so get the book. Where do we get the book?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for asking me that question. Fearless, Sell More on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can also go to my website, TomSternCentral.com. You'll learn about my comic strip, CEO Dad, that had 3 million circulation. The thing I wrote that won an Academy Award, and my sister thanking me in front of a couple billion people. And the radio show that I had nationally syndicated. And a lot of my search stuff, testimonials and different analyses of clients I had. And then the book itself and the testimonials. So it's more than you would want to know about me, so you can pick and choose. TomSternCentral.com, Barnes & Noble, Amazon for Fearless, Sell More. I feel like I should be wearing a cowboy hat and selling used cars. I almost kept it up too long.
Used cars, that's great. All
right, David, it's time.
Let's do some news. Here we go.
The news, July 2nd, 2021. Pandemic over. Growth in the industry increasing. And, I love these consumer confidence stories. So now, consumer confidence, which you said was high and it's edging. It continues to go up, David. I know that you're going to talk about the bubble and all that stuff every time we bring it up. But this just hot off the presses on June 29th, consumer confidence at its highest level since the start of the pandemic. So it rose to, again, about another couple of points from where it was. The short-term inflation didn't really impact consumers on it. And, it's a really important, figure. So again, just great news overall about the economy. Not that we need to comment on it too much, just thought I would throw that out there. So a couple of stories that are out there. So one poll that was out there, and this is something that Prudential did a poll on, 1/4 of workers still plan to seek a new job after the pandemic. So it's not just going back to what's comfortable, but actually leaving their work. And it's just going to create, again, for recruiters, a very, very strong area. And employers are looking to be a magnet, for that top talent in the marketplace. So, and just one other point for you to comment on it. Half of workers, so about almost 50%, said that the pandemic's made them reevaluate their career goals and do something that it hasn't really done since post 9/11, and giving them much more control and much more focus on the direction of their career.
Well, I'll tell you what, I agree. So I was going to mention that. I think the pandemic. Excuse me, I misspoke. The pandemic was a definitely gave a lot of people room to pause and think about their life choices, as well as a lot of companies now experimented with the remote work. I know a lot of companies are bringing people back in, but more and more companies are realizing that they can work. Or have people work remote, which is why I would never want to be in commercial real estate. That's probably a bad place to be here and there for the next few years. But I do think so, and I think that it's something that I think you recruiters should start having conversations with your prospects and your clients about that. Because one thing I think a lot of recruiters do is we work in the here and now, right? You need somebody. Okay, what do you need? Okay, let's go find that. We constantly work that, but I don't think we're having these conversations with our clients. And, hey, how are you approaching the work from home scenario? How are you looking at it? And start using that data and in your prospecting, reaching out to other hire managers on the 30s and whatnot and saying, hey, I've got this information. I'm talking with other VPs. Here's how they're handling it. Happy to talk to you about that as well, to give you some ideas. I think it's a great tool just for prospecting as well. But I think we need to start having a lot of those conversations, because I think, just as Neil said, I think we're going to be experiencing a pretty massive shift in just the motivations of an entire candidate base, right? And as well as how companies are going to react to it. I think some companies are going to be, behind the curve on this one.
And reevaluating, and this is interesting for recruiters because it's what you want to focus on with the candidates in terms of what's important to them. So the poll showed that job stability was the most important element for them. So stability, and then that was 68% said that when they were given all these choices. Next was work-life balance, which was by far the number one post 9/11. And obviously now with working remotely and seeing how that changes their lives is really big. And then salary and pay, which is at 58%. So salary is not number one, never is. It's number three, always is there. And again, so you need to be focusing in on really focusing on stability a lot more. Not, oh, it's a stable company. Like, explain why how stable they are. Know that the majority of your people, that's going to be the most important thing to them. And the work-life balance. You do need to milk these situations. If it's 100% work from home, that is worth, and we talked about that in other shows, it's worth money to them. It's worth giving up benefits to them. It's huge. So, and if they don't offer and you're trying to recruit someone, you need to go there and talk about that. And a combination of all of these things.
I'll tell you what, it just goes to show the importance of maintaining contact with your candidate base. So for a lot of recruiters, right, you might only call a candidate when you got a job for them, right? They get 5 calls a day, especially in the hot industries, and they get a bunch of job descriptions. Recruiters are saying, hey, I've got this here. Do you interested? No. Okay, great. On to the next. But if you keep in regular contact with your candidate base and talk to them all the time and give them material and become like an active participant in their lives through your content and whatnot, now you could start to understand. For example, now you can go to that candidate that is unhappy about having to work in the office 3 days out of the week, and he wants to go full-time work from home. You can make that call have to be a much more powerful call, because that one take your call, more about them. You know what I mean? And I think it's important that because of this and because of this big demographic shift, it just makes that much more important to develop some sort of candidate marination system, right? Whether it be content or whatever it is, as opposed to this transactional nature that I think a lot of recruiters get stuck in, especially when times are good. We get too dang transactional, in my opinion. Yep. What happened to Tom, by the way? He said that black screen about on the screen. What happened to him?
Oh, I thought I was supposed to. Hi, guys. I thought this was like I was in the green room. And
no. You chime in anything that comes in your head.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't want to interrupt.
I'm hogging the stage, sir. I'm sorry.
I listen. Work-life balance is critical. My comic strip CEO dad was all about a guy who tried to run his family like a business, and it was all about work-life balance. And the joke was, here was a guy who's incapable of work-life balance. He would tell his middle child that if they did better in school, he would promote them to firstborn. That was one of his ideas. So he was a corporately addicted person, and a lot of it is not just work-life balance in terms of time management.
Wow.
But it's work-life balance in terms of mental space. Can you leave the job and let it go? you know. And a lot of times when I've been running my business, my kids are grown up, I'd be at the dinner table spaced out. I was there, but I wasn't there. And that's, you know, what's hard is hard driving people out there, jobs that are demanding. You have a nut, you have got money you got to make. How do you just let it go? Like, I'm done for the day, and there's nothing I can do to make anything better or worse. And so I'll refresh for tomorrow.
Yep.
A lot of
So,
work-life balance is mental.
and so segueing in on also back to the remote thing, and people quote lots of statistics. So I'm going to give you a new one that was out, research from Gartner, and they're talking about the percentage of workers. And if they look at knowledge workers, 51% are expected to be working remotely by the end of this year. That's massively increased. I mean, pre-pandemic, and this is to continue now, was 27%. So it's almost doubled. And knowledge workers are knowledge intensive occupations, accountants, writers, engineers, right? And so remote work, you know, I think is obvious. So it's major. And so over 50% of these people, that's insane. And 32% of all employees worldwide are expected to work remotely by the end of this year. How's that for a statistic? That was 17% globally in 2019.
You know,
Well,
I would say
what is
one
the
thing that people aren't talking about though is the fact that, you know, and I know this from experience, having gone through it. When I started working from home every day, and this is probably about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I didn't know how to manage myself. You know, I felt like a hermit, it's stuck in my house, and so after work, all right, well, I'll go to the bar because where else am I going to go? You know, I can't stay here. I got to leave, and it takes a lot to manage it, I think. And I think that's probably something that's not talked about enough is how are they going to manage it? Because I know a lot of people fall apart with their working from home because they're so used to going to the office. They got the water cooler, they got, you know, it's Mary's birthday, and they bring cake and all, and they get the corner piece, you know, and all that kind of goes away. And I think companies are doing a poor job in getting their people ready for something like that. Because it's a big shift.
Yeah, and we talked about how to adopt to that, you know, throughout the year on the show. But you're now looking at the same estimates now from Gartner is, well, the U.S. is going to lead the pack globally, but in 2022, they think 53%, 53% of the U.S. workforce is going to be remote, which is something. It's such a major number. So anyway,
well, think about also what's the disruption to commercial real estate? What's going to happen to all this office space? But the other thing is about people working at home, and I'll talk from experience. You know, it's easier to fall into looking at YouTube for a while. Hey, that's a good one, and oh, there's another one of him on this talk show. You know, or watching ESPN. I mean, you're not in an office. Yes, you could watch things on your computer, and maybe nobody would know. But if you're in an open office, tougher. And you really have to self-regulate when you're working at home. You have to keep your focus. And, you know, at time, and then conversely, if you don't have an office, you can work all day long. So you can actually overproduce and wear yourself out. Both of those oppositional elements are possible. Do you guys agree?
Oh, 100% agree. And I think that is it for the show. We have one. In fact, I've got a 1 o'clock meeting, so I have a hard stop here at 1. And it's time for us to roll. And actually, Tom, we didn't even get to really go in depth on the book. We went sideways a bit and talked about anxiety and talked about tonality.
No, that is the book. That is the book. I mean, a lot of it's in the book.
But you know, there's a lot actually I wanted to cover that we didn't get to. So I guess I'll ask, and then I haven't talked to Neil about this. I'm sure he would agree. But I'd like to formally ask you if you'd ever do a second showing here at some point. So
you guys are fantastic. You're super bright. You're fun. Just the kind of energy and experience I'd be more than happy to do in the future, of course.
I thought he'd say, hell no. Wow, I'm surprised.
Awesome. Well, David,
thank you very much.
Don't forget us for your back office needs for placing temporaries. That segment didn't really talk about it on the news. Exploding. You need to be in it. We can help you do it.
100%. And I guess for me, I'd say if anybody wants the Lighthouse Method guide, it is a meaty, hefty, girthy 225 pages of sales and marketing goodness. Go to thedigitalheadhunter.com/lighthouse. I just released it 2 weeks ago. Check it out. Lots of good stuff there. And with that said, Tom, thank you very much. If
Yeah,
you,
thank you, Tom.
for anybody who wants to pick up the book, go to Amazon. It is Fear Less and Sell More, and Make Millions.
Find Your Courage and Make Millions with a
Courage.
forward by Jay Leno. Again, let me put my cowboy hat on.
Yeah, there you are. All righty,
All right,
everyone.
thank
See y'all in a week or 2 weeks. 2 weeks. David's
Bye,
off for some
everybody.
personal stuff. We'll see you in 2 weeks.